We learned in the conservative newspaper, The Washington Times, today that after the underwear bomber was read his Miranda rights, he cooperated with U.S. authorities to such an extent that, quote, U.S. and allied counterterrorism authorities have launched a global manhunt for English-speaking terrorists trained in Yemen who are planning attacks on the United States. This manhunt is underway due to information that the underwear bomber, quote, revealed during recent cooperation with the FBI that he met with other English speakers at a terrorist training camp in Yemen. What did FBI interrogators do to earn the scorn and insult they're receiving now from conservative politicians? The underwear bomber's interrogation has turned out to yield a lot of useful information, but Republicans are still trying desperately to blame the Obama administration for somehow doing this wrong.
I do see repeatedly examples that there are key members in the administration, like Eric Holder, for example, the Attorney General, who still insist on thinking of terror attacks against the United States as criminal acts as opposed to acts of war.
So you mentioned Eric Holder, the treatment of the Christmas Day underwear bomber. How do you think that case should have been dealt with?
I think the proper way to deal with it would have been to treat him as an enemy combatant. I think that was the right way to go.
Of course, that isn't at all the way that you did go when you were Vice President of the United States and making decisions about these things.
So was it a mistake when your administration took on the Richard Reid case? This is very similar. This was somebody that was trying to blow up an airliner with a shoe bomb. And he was, within 5 minutes of getting taken off that plane, read his Miranda rights 4 times, in fact, in the 48 hours, and tried through the civilian system. Was that a mistake?
Well, first of all, I believe he was not tried. He pled guilty.
You still had an option to put him into military custody.
Well, we could have put him into military custody. I don't question that.
You could have put him into military custody, but you did not. The Republican effort to attack President Obama on the basis of the underpants bomber, unlike the underpants bomb itself, appears to be blowing up. Say what you will about Dick Cheney, he's generally pretty skilled at making political attacks out of national security issues, but this time, on this one, even he is all tied up in knots.
So was it a mistake when your administration took on the Richard Reid case?
Well, we could have put him into military custody. I don't question that.
Yeah, but you didn't. You didn't. You could have, and you didn't. The attempted Republican talking point on the underpants bomber is that it's an outrage that this would-be bomber was read his Miranda rights and treated as a criminal.
And is reading Miranda rights to terrorists any way to fight a war?
Some of us have been so upset about it that they immunized him with the Miranda rule.
I think you don't give him Miranda rights.
Is it any way to fight a war to read Miranda rights?
You do not go in and interrupt him with Miranda warnings. We don't have to give Miranda warnings up front.
Mirandizing a terrorist like Abdul Muttalib is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what purpose there was in Mirandizing him.
The administration seems to have lost sight of this essential requirement for national security out of a preoccupation with reading the Christmas Day bomber his Miranda rights.
He should not have been given his Miranda warnings. This should not have been a Mirandized situation. You don't Mirandize.
You know, like the underpants bomber, the shoe bomber, Richard Reid, who also failed when he also tried to detonate PETN when he was also aboard a U.S.-bound airliner after also being trained and directed by al-Qaeda. Richard Reid was also arrested in the U.S. as a civilian criminal. And he was also, yes, read his Miranda rights 4 times. And what was wrong with that? Well, certainly no one complained at the time. Richard Reid was arrested, interrogated, charged as a criminal, and now he's in prison. He was treated exactly the way the underwear bomber was treated. He was Mirandized. Same goes for Zacarias Moussaoui, the only person convicted of participation in the 9/11 plot. He was arrested, interrogated, charged as a criminal, and now he's in prison. He was treated exactly the way the underwear bomber was treated. He was Mirandized. If anyone sees anything wrong with the treatment of the underwear guy, who didn't see anything wrong with the treatment of the shoe guy or of Zacarias Moussaoui or with the scores of other terrorism suspects we've treated the same way, the only salient difference between the cases is that now Barack Obama is president. So there must be something wrong. Every single person arrested in this country since 9/11 on terrorism charges, or even terrorism-related charges, every single one has been handled as a civilian criminal. Every single one. And of the years that have elapsed since 9/11, let's see, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, what came next? 08, and then there was 09. Yeah, after all of the years, of all the years that have elapsed since 2001, of all of those years in which every single person arrested in this country on terrorism charges was handled as a civilian criminal, in all but one of those years, Dick Cheney was the Vice President of the United States.
I think the proper way to deal with it would have been to treat him as an enemy combatant.
That would be a lot more convincing if you'd ever done that yourself when you had the chance. Every single person arrested in this country since 9/11 on terrorism charges, I repeat, has been handled as a civilian criminal, which includes being Mirandized, every single one. The only two outliers are Jose Padilla and Ali Al-Mari, both of whom were in military custody for a while, during which they didn't cooperate with their interrogators, by the way. But then even they were ultimately handled in the federal criminal system, treated as civilian criminals. There are no exceptions to this rule. The underwear bomber is being treated exactly the way that terrorism suspects arrested in the U.S. were treated during the Bush administration. Arrested, interrogated, charged as a criminal, and yes, that process includes being Mirandized. The Bush administration did it hundreds of times. And the current administration has continued doing it. Only now, the Bush administration in exile would have you believe that what they did all those years was a huge mistake, the mistakenness of which only became apparent when some other president did it, someone who's a Democrat. This is just like the Deficit Commission, or PAYGO, or cap and trade, or televising the health reform hearings, or closing Guantanamo, or any of these other things where politicians were for it until Barack Obama signed on with it. Then those same politicians are against it all of a sudden. It's called hypocrisy, and it should be reported as such. This has become a joke.